Jane, I can smell garlic. It's lovely.
Yes.
What is the menu you've chosen?
Well, tonight we're going to have very simple tomato soup, not out of a tin. Not out of a tin of tomato soup, but out of a tin of tomatoes. Then we're going to have mussels stuffed with garlic butter, which is snail butter, without the snails. And then we're going to follow that with a French cake, which I'm very fond of, called Pithiviers. Pithiviers is the name of the town where it's first made.
It sounds absolutely lovely. And I know the soup's already on the stove, so I'll just get it. Now, you've made this.
Yes.
You've made this, Jane. Tell us how you did it.
Well, it's a tin of tomatoes, cooked with an equal quantity of stock, and anything I've got around to put in, like onions and herbs. And then I liquidize it and add as much cream as I can afford. It's very, very simple.
Isn't it just? It's a
Yes,
lovely
as long as you
smell.
don't forget a little of the sugar to bring out the flavour of tomatoes, you can pretty well use any other seasoning that strikes your fancy.
And then you'd put cream in the top.
Yeah,
and
I
then
usually
chives.
I add a few chives. In the summer, of course, I hope they'd be chives from the garden.
And these are sort of freeze-dried ones. They've still got a nice colour to them, haven't
Yes,
they?
they've got a good colour, and when they're a minute or two in the soup, they come up quite nicely. And they've got quite a pleasant flavour.
Shall I put that to keep warm on top
Yes.
of your stove? There we are. And then, just a space here. Mine, pussycat. I'll put this pan away.
Yes.
Is it difficult to get mussels around here?
No, it's very easy, because mussels are to be found all round the shores of Great Britain, and most fishmongers have them if the month has an R in it. And this is a really perfect mussel. Lovely size, nicely closed. But occasionally, sometimes you get one that's obstinately open. If it stays open when you do that, then it's dead. You don't use that one. And then sometimes you get a very broken one, like this, and you wouldn't use that either. Then, of course, all the mussels have to have their beards removed. The beard is the bit it clings onto the rocks with, and you just yank it off. You sometimes have to give a little tug, but it's very quick to do. Of course, all these mussels have been well brushed under a cold tap. Occasionally you get a little barnacle thing on them. You might scrape it off. Get
Just
rid of that.
discard those.
Yes, and then you put this on the fire with a lid on it. Perhaps a little water if your pan's wobbly. And in 3 minutes, the mussels will be open if you don't have too many in the pan.
How long have these been on? About that time?
A little bit longer because the pan was slightly fuller. It's best to do them in batches because the less you can cook mussels, the better. Lovely.
They look lovely, don't they?
Yes, they've all opened. They're perfect. You just take them out, discard one of the shells. That leaves you with a mussel in that one. We're ready to go on to the next bit.
Quite a bit of
Ready.
liquid comes in the bottom
Yes,
too.
and that's lovely for soup or sauces. Now, instead of having a special plate, as they do in France for oysters, or snails, or anything like that, I use bread because the buttery juices flow over into the bread and it's lovely to eat afterwards. But you have to make little holes so that the shells don't wobble. Nobody's going to get an awful lot of mussels out of this
You
one.
could use an ordinary cottage loaf or something like that.
Oh, yes, of course. Or you could use an oblong loaf.
Are you using a special cutter?
No, it's a little tiny scone cutter from sort of Petit Four set, and it was round, but I put it like that and gave it a bash till it was roughly mussel shape. But you don't have to do that. You can pick it out with your fingers if you wanted to, or use an apple corer.
You're just making sort of like snail holders.
Yes, it is really. It's so that all the marvellous buttery juices can flow out onto the bread, and the bread gets a little bit crisp in the heat of the oven.
Sort of garlicky, herby butter.
I think it's a pity television hasn't got a smell attachment, because I think this is
Aren't
the
I
best
lucky?
smell in the world.
It's lovely.
Then you see the mussel will rest, just like that, in its little hole and won't wobble about in the heat.
And garlic butter on top.
Oh yes, that's marvellous. You want to be very generous with the garlic butter because you've got the bread underneath, so it doesn't matter if it flows over.
The smell is
It's
terrific.
marvellous.
How
isn't
do you
it,
make your
Lucy?
garlic butter?
Well, it's very easy, especially if you've got a food processor of any sort. You just take half a pound of butter and you cut it up into little bits. Then you add very finely chopped shallots, peel them first, of course, great big handful of parsley, and then the point, really, of the butter is to use really beautiful, fine, large garlic cloves like that, or double up the amount of garlic. I've just got 3 cloves.
Now, how long do you cook these for?
Oh, they don't take very long. The point really is that the temperature doesn't matter so much, except that it should be hot, but they must end up bubbling and slightly brown on top. You can always fake it by browning them off under the grill. The main thing is to cook them as little as you possibly can to get the effect you want. I reckon 10 minutes at 450 will be about right, and I set the pinger because I should forget about them probably while I was talking. And this is the most marvellous kitchen gadget ever invented. It was invented by a man called Alexis Soyer, who went to help Florence Nightingale in the Crimea. While she went on with the hospitals, he sorted out the kitchens. And he invented a lot of things, including the soldier's field stove, which soldiers still cook on. But without that, I don't know how I'd manage.
Sometimes you have a crunchy top on them.
Oh yes, well you get that, you see, by sprinkling just a few crumbs. You don't want too many crumbs because you've got bread underneath.
And you
Just put a few on top.
just
like
before you pop them into the hot
that. Just
oven.
before you put them into the hot oven.
Next on the agenda is the petit cake.
That's right, yes.
And you put one in the oven earlier and it should be just about ready now.
Yes, I think it should be just right.
And if you'd be kind enough to clear the table,
Yes,
you can
all
show
right.
us how to make it. I'll get the one from the oven. Oh, it looks beautiful. Really dark golden brown. It smells almondy. So how do you make it, Jane?
Well, it's very simple. You buy a couple of packets of puff pastry and you roll them out to dinner plate size, or larger or smaller, it just depends on the number of people you want to feed. You brush round the edge of the lower one with beaten egg, and I've already put the filling in the middle, and it's very quick and easy to make. You just take a couple of egg yolks, keep the egg whites because you'll need them later on. The melted butter, 2 ounces, 2 tablespoons of cream, 4 ounces each of almonds and sugar. Just mix them together, no special order. Dump them in the middle. Then you put it onto the tart.
Oh, this is
like
the slightly
that.
larger one.
Very
to go on
slightly,
top.
but you don't want it too much larger because you're going to knock up the edges. Then now this is where the fun begins. I love this. You make a hole roughly in the middle.
Must let the steam out, is it?
Well, yes, otherwise it can burst, and you sort of nick it. You're aiming to make scallops around the edge, so it has a sort of formal rose effect. So you go round like
Sort
that.
of a Tudor rose.
Yes, it's a Tudor rose, and you shove up on the necks with your fingers. That's the sort of petals, and you do that all round. And then you go round, knocking up the edge. That helps it to rise nicely. Then you brush the whole thing over with beaten egg. This starts the gloss going when it's cooking. I just smash up an egg in a cup like this, and I might add a tablespoon of water. Nothing very fancy about it. Then you're ready to start the petals, really, and they are swirls. So you take the point of a very sharp knife, the point really is to have a very sharp point, and you score the pastry in a sort of curve like that, being very careful not to go right through, or the filling will come bursting out.
There's a bit of an artistic touch about this.
Yes, well, you can do anything you like. I mean, you could put Happy Birthday to You on it if you wanted to, but the point is that this is the special Petit design, and every time a French person sees a cake like this, they say, it's a Petit, and if they cut it open and they found jam in the middle, they'd be furious. Of course, I haven't done the edge properly because I haven't got the time. You just put that in the oven.
So how long does this take in the oven?
About 20 minutes at mark 8, 450, until it's risen and golden brown, but go entirely by the appearance rather than the time, because if you've got a big Petit, it might take a little bit longer. And when it looks really ready and just right to eat, you take it out, but you haven't finished. And you put a big sheet of newspaper on the table, put the Petit down on top, and very quickly dredge icing sugar over it. Not too much, but just a nice sanding.
With a little sieve and shake
Yes.
it.
And then you put it back in the oven, and you can keep opening the door to check on it, because you take it out again when it's got a nice dark brown glazy look, but you don't want to burn it.
So that's the grand finale of our meal.
Yeah, that's right, yes, it is.
Your tomato soup was surprisingly good. I'm now looking forward to trying these mussels, but I'm not quite sure how to tackle them.
Well, they're quite easy. You pick up your fork, and you pick up the shell, and then you lift out the mussel.
The smell's lovely.
Or if you're Geoffrey, and you just tip the
Tip them into the...
mussels out onto the bread, and take up your knife and eat the whole thing